Tonight I'm going to start a video series on transcription to help you if you get involved in a transcription program like Transcribe Me or Rev or some other program, so that you guys can do well and actually earn money from a transcription service like that. Now, there's no guarantees on this, but I'm going to try to give you somewhat of a tutorial on this in the hopes that it will help you either get on a program like this or do well in making money off of something like this. You don't have to be a master typist, okay? You can actually make money from this, and if you're going to try to make millions of dollars, you have to really be a good typist. But if you're just trying to make a few bucks on the side, this is a good way to do it, okay? Especially if you're not doing that great on YouTube, okay? So anyway, let me tell you some of the things you really need to know if you're going to do something in the line of transcription, okay? This is just going to be video number 1. There will be a video 2, and so on and so forth. As you're following along, take a look at the top right corner of the screen. You are going to eventually see cards up here that will link you from this video to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. Alright? So, let's begin. The first thing you're going to have to get used to when you're doing things for a transcription service, do you know how normally when you're typing or when you're actually reading a book, you'll see 2 spaces between the end of one sentence and the next? Well, not in transcription. There's only 1 space between the end of one sentence and the next. And that does take somewhat of an adjustment. Okay? And it will take you a while to adjust to something like that. So, if you're involved in a transcription service, remember there's only 1 space between the end of one sentence and the beginning of another sentence instead of 2. And that will take a little adjustment. Okay? Now, some of these transcriptions, okay, you'll be listening to the audio or you'll have some kind of video. You will actually either physically see 2 people or you will actually hear 2 people. Okay? So, you have to, when you're typing this all out, you have to say, okay, this is the first speaker speaking, and this is the second speaker speaking, and you have to go back and forth, back and forth. The speaker number 1 said this, speaker number 2 said that. When you're doing some of these major transcriptions, they do identify themselves, and the very second they do, then you have to say, okay, speaker number 1 is Tom, and speaker number 2 is Jill, okay? This guy is Tom, this gal is Jill, and you can say, okay, Tom said this, Jill said that, so on and so forth, back and forth. And sometimes there's more than 2. Sometimes they identify themselves, sometimes they don't. If they do not identify themselves, you have to say speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 3, so on and so forth. But if they do identify themselves, you have to say who they are. And sometimes they'll just give you their first name, sometimes they'll even go as far as to give you their last name too. You can put that in there as well. Alright? Now, another thing to remember is that when a speaker changes the topic in his presentation, you need to start a new paragraph. Okay? Because some of these speakers will just run on and on and on. They'll just keep talking and talking. And you may not realize right away that you need to actually make another paragraph for them. Alright, now let me give you an example of this. Alright, now I'm going to read 2 paragraphs. Alright. The biggest challenge to speed reading a book is the vocabulary included in the text. Fortunately, 60% of our language comes from the language of Latin, according to Berthold, Ullman, and Norman Henry. But not even the best scholars are exactly sure how Latin was originally pronounced due to the fact that it's been a dead language for nearly 2,000 years. Fortunately, you can formulate an approximate pronunciation by learning the language of Italian. That's because both languages come from the same country. Now, you say, okay, which one is paragraph 1 and which one is paragraph 2? Well, when I read the biggest challenge to speed reading a book, that was paragraph 1. But when I read, fortunately, you can formulate an approximate pronunciation, okay, that was paragraph 2. Why the change? Okay, because you're changing from the struggle of speed reading to finding a solution to that problem. You see what I mean? So first I stated a problem, then I stated a solution. So part 1 was stating the problem, part 2 was stating the solution. Okay? It's just like if I was describing certain parts of my I take trips all the time. You guys know this. So if I want to tell you about my trip to Carlinville, I would tell you a few brief things about my trip to Carlinville, and then I would tell you about my trip to Litchfield. Well, obviously the topic has changed from Carlinville to Litchfield. And so you make a new paragraph for Litchfield, and you'd have one paragraph for Carlinville and one paragraph for Litchfield. And if within the paragraph of Carlinville I tell you certain things about Carlinville, and then I tell you something else about some other part of the town, then of course you would break that up as well. And you have to learn how to do that. Alright? So, what is the etymology of the word verbatim? The word verbatim comes from the Latin word verb, which ironically just means word. Okay? So any word, and the Latin word where they say it's supposed to be pronounced verbum, but whatever. The thing is that instead of it being a noun, it's actually a verb. Okay, so it's either a passive verb or it's an active verb, but it's a word that has nothing to do with a noun or an adjective. Adjectives describe things, nouns name things. This just tells you the action of a particular sentence. Okay? Now, so literally speaking, the word verbatim means to transcribe something. Oh boy, that was terrible. So literally speaking, the word verbatim means to transcribe something exactly as the speaker says something. In other words, you're not there to massively grammar check, spell check, switch out words that don't sound very well. Okay? Now, when you have a clean verbatim, you want to clean up some of the things he says, but you don't want to change the content of what he says by changing certain spellings, certain grammar, that kind of thing. You have to be careful. You only change those things which will make it more readable, but not necessarily change what he's trying to say. Okay, that's clean verbatim. If you have straight verbatim, you just want to say it exactly as he says. If he stutters, if he stammers, you want to put that all in. Okay, and we'll get into that later. We'll get into that in another lesson. Okay. Okay, so as I said, in a future lesson, I'm going to tell you about stutters and stammers, and if it's a clean verbatim, you want to get rid of those stutters and stammers. And you know I do stutters and stammers in my videos. In a clean verbatim, you want to get rid of them. In an actual verbatim, if you want to write it exactly word for word, you would write all the stutters, stammers, etc., etc. And believe me, if you wanted to transcribe this particular video, you'd have a lot of fun with it. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this particular presentation. I will continue this video series. When I do, like I said from the beginning of the video, you will actually see a card that will take you to part 2, and then another card that will take you to part 3, and however many parts this will actually be. And I will tell you more in a future video, so I'd like for you to stay tuned.